Welcome to the Business Trendsetter Podcast, where we talk about trends and how to use them to grow your business. My name is Manny Charan.
And I'm Adam Martin.
We're Spark Partners. We're here every week discussing all things trends. We occasionally delve into politics, but not taking sides, mainly about how it affects your business. And of course, the big talk about the World Forum, is what's happening with the U.S. race here for being president in November. And of course, we have the heavyweight champion of the world, Biden, against the former heavyweight champion of the world, Trump. And there's some lessons to be learned in business regarding what's happening here. And I think we'll talk about this. We might take off our kid gloves. We might not. I'm not sure. But the idea here is that we have an incumbent, a sitting president that is struggling on many fronts. And his party is struggling as well. So this can be mapped to what happens in business. So let's open that conversation, Adam, and see where it goes from there.
Yeah, so what we're going to do is going to analogize that Biden is like the CEO, okay? And then all of the people in the Democratic Party are like the employees, okay? And then the voters are the customers. So that's kind of the analogy that we're running down here. And the thing to take a look at is, how do we make decisions in business most of the time and often end up making a poor decision? We've talked in the past, there's some real obvious ones. How could it possibly be true that Kodak could invent the digital camera and then give it away and end up, a nothing company down the road because digital phones took over the world, right? That's just one example. Another one was when Xerox invented office printing. They invented all the technology that goes behind our ability to hook a computer up to a printer and have desktop publishing. That whole thing was invented by Xerox, yet they wouldn't let go of the copier. Right. And so at the end of the day, they lost that technology with HP and Apple. And Xerox is this long lost company. I don't even know the last time I saw a Xerox machine somewhere. So we sit and look at it. We say, how can somebody do that? How can you make that kind of a mistake? How could you go so wrong? And I think that what's happening right now is a real time opportunity to take a look at that as to what's going on. So what you have is that you have a lot of the customers are saying, hey, we're okay, but we're not keen, right? So the voters are out there saying, basically, the polls indicate that they don't really love either candidate. And so like, you got to pick the Republican, you got to pick the Democrat. The most favorable answer is, I don't really want to vote for either of them, but which one will I vote for? Okay. So you take a look at that, you start saying, well, that's a competitive opportunity. Because now what you're saying is the marketplace isn't being well served. The customers are saying, I'm not crazy about this. Now, some customers are saying they love one solution, some say I love another solution. You're going to have that. And so if you look at your customer base, you're going to some of them love your answer, and some people love the other guy's answer, one of the other answers. But often they're sort of saying, neither of these really solve my problem. Neither of these really make me happy. And I wish I had a third alternative. And the key for us is to say, well, why don't we go for that third alternative? Why don't we jump in the middle of that? Why don't we do something? And we see this starting to happen here. We started seeing people say, you know what, we should embrace this third alternative because we might be able to do far better if we were able to move to that third alternative. But then what happens is the employee reaction and the CEO reaction. So what we saw happen here was the CEO reaction was, no way. No, I'm not interested in that. I've been here a long time. I've been leading, in this case, the Senate, not presidency. I've been in leadership positions in this organization for a very, very long time. I know what I'm doing, and by golly, I'm going to step. And because I think I know what's best. Now, what's around him, obviously, is circle. What's around him are people they're reinforced to be positive towards that person. The CEOs they rarely put people in office that second guess them. They rarely put people, behind them. They're going to ask really meaningful questions about stuff. They tend to like people that say, yeah, let's do what you want, boss. Yeah, boss, that's what you want. That's what we do. So what happens is the CEO says to his staff around him, well, what do you think about this idea that I should, somebody else going to take this in a different direction? They're like, oh, boss, really? You don't want to do that. Now, remember, every one of them, their job is owing to this guy. Right? He's the job. They're looking at when the next job comes along, they want to make sure that he's going to give them a great referral. He's going to call people up, help them get the next job. So when he says, what do you think I ought to do? Do you think they're going to say, boss, you're getting a little long in the tooth. Maybe you should rethink this. Of course not. The incentives are all wrong for that. So then what happens is the rest of the organization, all the employees are looking at it and saying, hey, you know what? The future's not looking so good here. Now think about how often we see that. It's not uncommon that employees go look at Glassdoor results, for example. Then employees will be saying, I've got real questions about the future of this company. I've got real questions about the leadership of the company. But does the leadership look at that? Often the outsiders will look at that. Recruiters, potential employees will look at that information. But the leaders will be like, oh, those are the naysayers. Oh, those are the people I want to forget about that. And then what happens is the reaction becomes, well, do I want to try to go with my known entity, or do I want to take the chance of going into an unknown situation? And this is the big decision where most people fail. If we take a look at the book I wrote and the 1,300 first cases I did, the 10,000 additional cases we done 6 did, what happens is when faced with doing more of what they've done, or the alternative of going into a very unknown situation, perhaps something that could be chaotic, for which not only is the outcome unclear, but the process would be unclear. Like I'm not sure how I would launch a new technology. I'm not sure how I would go to a new customer group. I'm not sure how I would do it. I know how to do what I've done, and I'm very good at doing what I've done. Do I really want to stop doing what I've done to undertake something I don't know anything about? And then you get the people start saying, well, do what you've always done. Well, what is the current situation is one in which the current leader has always been able to bounce back from anything. He said, well, I've always just stuck to my guns, so I'm going to stick to my guns, doing what they've always done. But everybody else really starts saying, well, wait a minute, why doesn't the whole party sort of stand up and look at this situation and say, look, boss, it's really time. It's really time. Because what the blowback is, how would we do that? Who would we pick?
Exactly.
If it wasn't this person, Biden, who would it be? And how would we undertake that debate? And where would we take that debate? And who would we pick? And would the person we pick be any better than the person we have? And because the answer to those questions are unknown, a lot of people say, let's just let it go. Let's just do what we're doing. Or they'll try to say, let's pick somebody who's very much like the current person, not likely to change things very much. In this case, the vice president. We'll pick the vice president because that person is a lot like the president, and we don't have as much chaos in the decision-making process.
Yeah,
And I think that's a good analogy because a lot of business people can look at this and say, man, the data is so clear here. The trends here are clear. If you look, the trends are clear. Most voters are looking for somebody else. When they did polls, and they took Haley, and they said, how would Haley do against a Biden or a Harris or any of those other people? What they discovered, she always won. I mean, big numbers, like 13 points more than any Democratic candidate that they put up, and frequently did better in all polling than the candidate on the Republican side. But what happened was they got stuck. The other side, got stuck in that same mode. Where are we going to stay? Well, we're going to stay with our candidate. So now they're sitting there. So your competitor's sitting there saying, I'm not going to change. But yet, even the people that were second and third in that genre, they scored better. So you say, well, I think it's really time that we probably should be sitting there saying, listen to what people, the customers are saying. They don't like either current solution. They feel as if their needs are poorly met. Could we come up with a solution that would better meet their needs, even though we don't know what that looks like right now?
Yes.
We're ready to undertake that process.
I think the parallels to business in this situation are unparalleled. And what happens, I think, in the case of if you're the business leader, if you're the owner of the company, think about those around you in the same circumstance, right? They're not going to tell you things that you don't want to hear necessarily, right? They're gonna try to keep their job, so they're gonna placate to your whims. I've always tried to build organizations where safety was at the top of my mission with my employees. What I mean by safety is they have full ability to contradict me, to disagree with me, but what happens is just inherently there's that bias because they're going to say, okay, I'll do that. But when push comes to shove, they're going to hold back because they're afraid that their job is at stake. And I think over time, if you look at the successful companies out there that have really adapted and grown, they've formed a situation where leadership does have that. There is that safety at the top. Look what's happening with Facebook. I mean, some of the things with Instagram, when they bought Instagram, I mean, that was not necessarily an easy thing for Mark Zuckerberg to say, okay, yeah, I'll just buy this thing that's way different than us. I mean, it took some gravitas, it took some gumption from his lieutenants to say, look, this is a new thing. There's a new trend that's already growing. We might as well make this change now and be part of it.
And let me kind of get back again to this analogy and some of the things that we see in it. So this idea that the customer base was unhappy with their alternatives came up more than a year ago. Like 2 years ago, people started talking about this. The polls started showing that if the event was headed towards the two incumbents being the candidates, we wouldn't be very happy about that. So that was when it would have been a really good time to start a process of selection. But inevitably, what happened was one side did a process, but it was really truncated process. There weren't that many candidates on the Republican side, and the really was handled in such a way that a very small collection of employees had control, and that those employees who had control of the process, drove it towards the answer they wanted. Right? They wanted to keep the incumbent. On the other hand, the other side, which said open opportunity to do something, chose to do nothing. There was never any discussion about an alternative to Mr. Biden, right? There was never, what could the Democrats do otherwise? There was no open discussion. There were no open primaries, right? Nobody really went to a ballot and voted that way. Here's option B that you could go for. It was like you vote for option A or not vote. And the other thing was that you didn't have any debate. You didn't, that chance to start saying what would be better than the incumbent, what would be the alternative, never occurred. So this is also what happens in companies. We wait far too long. We start seeing the inkling that there's something unhappy out there. We start hearing that some of our customers are not doing well. In this case, the data coming out was saying that black voters who had been loyal to the Democrats were not as loyal. That Latino Americans who had once been loyal to the Democrats were becoming less loyal. That there were constituencies, customers, that were losing their loyalty and were looking for an alternative. When that data started coming in, that early data, so when we talk about watching trends, looking at early data, right, picking things up in the very beginning, that was the opportunity to sit back and say, what do those people want? Because now they're becoming sort of open for a new vote. They've maybe been loyal to me as a customer, but now they're looking at alternatives, and we don't know if they're going to switch. What the Democrats did, a lot of companies, is like, don't switch, keep buying from me, You always bought from me, keep buying from me. But instead of coming in and saying, well, what is it you want? And how would I adjust my product? How would I adjust my offering? What could I do? What would be the alternative that you would look for? That conversation should have started 2 years ago. But often in business, we do the same thing. We just wait. And then what happens after we're now really late in the cycle, then it really looks like we've got to change, right? And now the employees are sitting around saying, gee, I really think we need to change. In this case, donors, people in the Democratic Party, and say, look, I really think we've got to do something about it. Our hair's on fire. We need to do something about it. And what happens is now the incumbent will start saying, look at everything I've done for you. Look at everything I've done for our customers. And you're looking backwards, saying, oh, look, we were very successful here, and here, which is the exact opposite of what you should do, as we say on the first podcast.
Yeah.
And you say, here's what I'm going to do for you in the next 4 years. Here's what my next wave is going to be for you. Because that's what customers care about. Are you going to take me to the next place? Are you going to take me where I want to go? And so what we see happening here in the incumbent's case is somebody doing exactly the opposite of what they should do. They're trying to say, let me continue to be in this role by defending what I've historically done. And that's what we, of course, call defend and extend management, right? The DNA, defend and extend management. Defend what you've always done, try to extend it a little bit. And say, look, this is what I did for you when I was previously in office, this is what I've done for you lately. Then I want to extend that a little bit, right? That's what I'm going to do, defend and extend it. In fact, if you listen to the conversation coming from the White House, it's mostly a lot of, we want to finish the job, meaning extend the policies we've currently done. And then what your customer base is saying is, that's okay, but it's not great.
Yeah.
It's okay, but I don't think it really meets my needs.
No,
And
if you watch the debate, it was terrible. It was not only was it name calling, but I would say 90% of it was, they would be asked a direct question. How are you going to handle this future situation? And their answer was either to talk about something else entirely or to talk about something that they did 2 years ago. And I think a lot of CEOs, a lot of leaders have the tendency to do that in a maybe different way. And I think we have to be smart enough to see through that. And if you're the CEO, if you're the leader, I think it's important to really look at what you're saying and that vision you have and how you execute it to make sure that it looks forward, not backwards. I mean, you and I, Adam, we talk about how the windshield is this big and the rearview mirror is this big, and that should be the same way in your business. But most people that do strategic plans do it the other way around. They're driving backwards, looking backwards, and they have this entire thing in front of them that they're not even discussing.
Yeah. And really to listen to your customers. We harped on this last podcast, and we'll get around to it on 3 or 4. But in this case, the customers are being very vocal, right? And so your employees and customers are saying that, the donors, people of the party, and customers are all saying, we'd like to have a change. We'd like to have something different. And the reaction of, well, no, is clearly not listening to the customers. It's clearly saying, you don't know what you need. I know what you need. And of course, then what happens is you get attacked for being in politics. They call you an elite, right? You're an elitist because you think you know what I need when you don't really know what I need. And this is what we tend to do in business as well. We'll look at what the customer's doing. We'll say, I've always served the customer well. And what you need is a little bit faster service. What you need is a little more helping hand service. What you need is maybe give you a little bit better terms or cut my price a little bit. That's what you need. And the customer's saying, well, no. Right now I'm looking for something more than that. So if we take a look, for example, at technologies, technologies come along, the customer's saying, I'm not sure that I'll buy the next phone if it doesn't have artificial intelligence embedded in. I'm not sure I'm going to buy the next technological device. I said phone, but it could be any of the multiple devices we use. If it is a little bit smarter to my needs, and what software to be smarter to my needs. So what we see is that we see companies and some of these leaders really reacting quickly now. They kind of didn't pay any attention to artificial intelligence for a long time, but now they're reacting very quickly. So, okay, my customers are telling me if I want to get the next sale, I would have to embed this new technology. And so that's what I think we want to start seeing all of our leaders do. And of course, again, this picture we're looking at in the political world right now is we've got two major players, neither of which are doing that worth a dollar, right? They're not paying much attention. In business, the thing here that would be totally different is it creates the opportunity for an alternative technology to jump into the fray. So, we saw, for example, the newspapers were really, really powerful, and big newspaper companies like Gannett were competing with Dow Jones and the New York Times. And what happened was, out of the blue, from around the corner from the social media, right? The social media just knocked all those guys off the pillar. And I think that's what kind of people are looking at now is saying, if you go down this road, one of these two guys is going to win, but, what's going to happen next would be really what's interesting. This would have been a good opportunity if you look back at history. The Republicans were not a strong party when Lincoln ran for president. The Whigs were the stronger party, or what the Republicans of that era, and then you have the Democrats. And Lincoln was a third-party candidate, and he came in and said, look, I'm listening to the people, and the bulk of the people in the country don't want slavery. And so since you guys can't seem to get off the dime and do anything about it, I'm willing to get a lot more vocal about the changes I'm willing to make. And that made him very popular, and thus he won the election, right? So the third party came in, somebody who really had never been particularly successful in politics, by the way, right? He lost far more elections than he won. And that's, again, what we would typically say in business. If we were sitting here looking at this and two big competitors would say, this is the opportunity right now for the third party, somebody to come in with a new solution, a new approach that could really knock somebody, could really get that inroads, make that big jump into fragmenting the market and taking a new position.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, in this country, at least, the surrounding environment, we'll say, almost prevents that from happening. I mean, a third party at this stage would be almost impossible. I mean, I'm a third party guy. I'm pretty vocal about being libertarian. I don't really see a libertarian option. Trump presented at the Libertarian National Convention, and he said, I'm going to put a couple of libertarians on my cabinet, on my staff. Okay, what is that really worth? So, Adam, I think what would be a really good thing for our listeners, especially if they're CEO or executive, owner of a company, is why don't we go through and give them some ideas, a playbook, if you will, of things that they can do with their team to sort of better address their customers, right? Their constituents. So I'll start off with that. they got to better understand their customers, and they have to really go and not only just ask them, but certainly spread a very wide net, looking at competitors, looking at trends, understanding where the customers are going. And so that's where I'll start with that. And if you want to add to that, or
I think you're exactly right. And then to make a statement, now what you should do is say, we've looked at the customers, and you've told us, and then you use some data. You said 50% of you told me this, 70% of you told me that. These are the things we heard from you people, from the customers, is that you were looking for. And then you admit where you were not aligned. You can admit where, in this case, it would be, you've been telling us for a long time that you think that the candidate we have may have been a good candidate, but you've been concerned if they can survive, any longer, and you would like to have an alternative, right? And admit that. That's the first thing you tell your customers. You've listened to them. This is what they've said, and this is where I was out of joint with you. This is where I was not connected up with you. And so the thing that gets people's attention in a big way. They go, okay, now you're listening to me. Then the second thing you do is you put together a team, right? We call them white space teams, blank space teams, and either one you phrase it doesn't matter. What's important is you say, you pick some people, and you say, look, I want you to come up with a really good answer that addresses the customer's needs. What is it that they want? What would they like? And you stay away from it. You back off as the CEO. You back off as the C leader. And you say to these people, look, I want you to come back quickly with some insights as to where the market is poorly served. What is their unserved needs? So in this case, for example, you find out that people love a lot of people like ideas of electric vehicles, but there still aren't any charging stations in a lot of the country. So quit telling me to buy an EV whenever you don't get the charging network built. They come back and they would say, it's really great that you put billions of dollars into chip fabs, but to be honest, it doesn't create that many jobs. What am I supposed to do? If I'm not an electrical engineer, what are these chip fabs going to do for me? How's that going to make my life better, right? And so you start listening to those things, and you start paying attention to them and saying, okay, these were the things that you told us where we poorly served you as a customer, and we need to adjust that. Now, in this case, I think the first thing you get back is we were told that you're very, very concerned about our leadership, and therefore we're going to change the leader. I think that's the number one thing you would have in this instance. A lot of leaders are fearful of that. They're fearful, if I set up this team, that's what's going to happen. The team will come back with an idea that says that's either I go away or my ideas go away, or what I stand for goes away. And I'm the leader of this company. And so I don't want to give power to a group of people that might come back and say something I don't want to hear. So this is, again, very hard for leadership to do, but it is really critical to get that information so that you can start to turn around your situation with your customers. Turn around so that they're much happier people ready to stay with you.
Yeah, if you think about these companies you mentioned earlier, the Kodaks of the world, Xerox, Toys R Us, Sears, Blockbuster, there's a whole graveyard of dead or dying companies out there. And imagine if they would have come out, if the CEO of Toys R Us would have said, look, we heard you, offering all these new toys in our stores isn't enough. We've decided to double down. We're going to close half the stores, and we're going to turn into a 50% online retailer. And the stores that do exist, we're going to turn them into warehouses. And so now we're going to have these things spread across the U.S., and we're going to be able to ship toys to your family within 2 days or 1 day, whatever, right? It would have kept them alive. And same thing with Blockbuster. If they would have said, listen, we have all these stores, we're going to shut some of them down, we're going to turn some of them into warehouses, we're going to partner with Netflix, we're going to buy Netflix, and we're going to become this amazing company that has the ability to not only have you walk into the store, or we can just send you the DVD. It would have been a different story.
Which gets to the third piece of the playbook, and that's recognizing that a successful business addresses all of its constituents. There is a real tendency in modern business to think the constituent that is most important is the investor. In fact, the whole theory of the firm at the University of Chicago in the 1980s was that really the only people that do matter is investors. That the theory of the firm was we borrow people's money, we take their money, and get their money back to it, and a company or corporation only exists to support the investors. And that get very inbred, and greed is good, and all kinds of stuff come out of that. And what that misses is the fact that, in fact, you can't be successful for your investors if you aren't successful with customers. You got to be successful there first. And then if you're successful with customers, you're also going to be successful with your community, right? So the people around you support you, and the people that are there. And then the third group is your suppliers. You got to be successful with those. So it's the investors and the customers and the community and your suppliers. Those are four constituencies that, as a leader, you really have to serve. You need to sit back and say, okay, I have been paying too much attention to one constituency. Sometimes in this particular case, it can be a particular group of the Democratic Party. I've been paying too much attention to them and not listening enough to other parts of my employee group, parts that would be concerned about where we're headed, right? And so you want to get that, listen to that constituency, the communities. What is it they're saying that they want? You know, we've got a lot of investment being made in North America, in the United States. There are people saying that it's the kind of investment they want, right? Are they getting the right kind of help? I hear an awful lot of people say that we need more housing. You know, what's a young person of 32 supposed to do if the average price of a starter home in their community is $450,000 or $500,000, or in California even more than that, right?
Right.
Then they're like, how's my dream going to happen? I'm making $50,000 a year. I'm never going to get a home. So then you start saying, look, now I understand the concerns of the constituency, not only the customer, but the community. The suppliers that can come to you like, well, how are we going to raise a new generation of politicians? And that's another big problem that we have in this particular analogy we're working with, is these politicians never left, right? Look how old Mitch McConnell is. Look how old Schumer is. Look how, we got really old people. They just didn't have the willingness to retire, to move on, to pass the torch, to groom their successors, so that they could say at age 66, I've been working with these people, and this is the person that should follow me into office on both sides of the party. All across politics. We're seeing that there's a real problem here. We haven't brought a replacement. So, right, we haven't really worked with our suppliers in order to have the people in place that we need. So now the third piece of this is recognizing that you do move out to start talking about how you're going to satisfy all of your constituencies. That in fact, what you've been doing has been, you've gotten into trouble by listening to too narrow a group of constituents. You know, a subset of your customers usually is what gets you into this problem, and a subset of employees who do well with those customers. And so those customers, they keep saying are the core that they want to take care of, and we're the core employees take care of it. So you can't threaten us, and everything else needs to be second grade. Now you turn that around and say, you know what? Yes, they're important, customers, you employees, but we've got to make changes. We've got to move on. We've got to go to the next step. So if you start thinking of that playbook that way, you know, moving yourself forward in terms of listening to the customers, putting in place teams that can really use customer data to come up with the next idea. We use external data, not internal data. It's like, how do I improve what I have, or maybe how I do something entirely different, so that they come up with new solutions. Like right now, the Democrats, one of their problems is they don't seem to have a process to get a different candidate. So they're saying we don't go for another candidate, so we have a process. Well, you could put a team together really fast to come up with a process and say, this is how we would do it. Once you've got the process, then you open the door for the next step, right? So it's going from recognizing the problem, incorporating that external data, setting up a team that can attack it, and then addressing all of your constituencies, and not just a narrow set of constituencies that have been important to you in the past. If you take those three steps and you really work them, then you can make progress. Now, how fast you work them is up to you. Like I said, we should have been the leaders of both parties should have done this 2 years ago. Because I think while we're watching it in real life right now with the Democratic Party, we also know that on the Republican side, there's the same sort of malaise around the candidate. There's a narrow group that truly loves the candidate, and they're very, very happy. But an awful lot of voters are kind of like, I'm a Republican, this isn't my guy. I wish I had somebody different to go for.
Yep.
So 2 years ago, both of them should have opened up the door. The organization should have opened up, let the suppliers come in, give more info, and try to get better connected with the customers first, and the rest of the constituency second.
Very well said, Adam. Very well said. If look, politics, and to use this analogy, to close out the analogy, there's limited things that we as business people can do as everyday Joes. But in your business, we have lots of opportunities to make change, to really take that playbook and start to execute on it, and ultimately, take your business where the customers are and where the trends are.
Well said, Manny. Well said.
All right. Thank you, Adam. Take care. We'll talk to you next time. Cheers.